Hey guys, Mark here. I hope you're doing well. In today's video, I'm going to demonstrate one of the simplest rope mats that you can make. It is called the Carrick mat, and even though it is a simple mat, it is a functional one. You can use it as a coaster or as a hot pad under hot dishes on the table. Now, with that said, let's take a closer look at the mat, then make one ourselves. Here you can see an example of a mat that you're going to be able to tie using this tutorial. Now, as you can see, the mat is a 3-pass version, which means that it has 3 strands going through the entire mat. The mat can be tied in several different ways, for example by using a Carrick bend, which you then expand into the mat. You could also, for example, tie a 3-part 4-bite Turk's head, flatten it out, and tie the mat that way. In any case, let's move on to the supplies, then get to tying. Now, for any rope mat, the most important supply is, well, the rope. There are natural ropes as well as artificial ropes available. Artificial ropes are stronger and more lasting, but usually don't have the appeal of natural cordage. So in my case, I'm going to be using natural cordage, and you have a lot to choose from. You can use hemp, which is very traditional and nice to work with. You have cotton, which is white and very elegant, but usually likes to get dirty after a while of use. You have sisal, you have manila, and so on. So you have a lot of options as far as natural cordage goes. The mat that I made is made out of sisal. As far as the length of the rope that you're going to need, I used about 11 feet of rope for this mat. The diameter of the rope that I used is about 8 millimeters, which is a bit under 3/8 of an inch. So 3/8 of an inch or about 8 millimeters. I wouldn't go much smaller than that since the mat is already fairly compact. When tied loosely, with 3 passes, the diameter of this mat is about 7 inches. The second supply that I usually use is thread. Thread is used in order to whip the ends of your rope to secure them, as well as do the final stitching at the very end. Now, if you're going to be using thread, make sure that it is of a complementary color so that it doesn't stick out too much. Alternatively, you could also use duct tape or just simple tape. Tape, just regular one, tends to slip off of the rope, so I wouldn't bother using it. Duct tape may be used, but it doesn't look quite as nice as using a traditional whipping onto the ends. For stitching the mat at the very end, you will want a stitching needle. Now, stitching is only one of the ways that you can use to finish up a rope mat. Feel free to look around my channel. I feature several ways such as lashing and splicing. So, a stitching needle. Usually, I use a harness needle, which is used to stitch leather, but a regular needle will do the job just as well. Finally, you're going to need something to cut the rope as well as thread with. After gathering the supplies, the next step in making our mat is going to be to prepare our rope. Now, the rope that I'm using is 3/8 inch diameter rope, about 11 feet long. The first thing that we do after cutting our rope is to secure the ends. This prevents the ends from fraying or unraveling. To secure the ends, you can either tape them up or you can do a common whipping. So at this point I'm going to show you the common whipping. For the common whipping, take a piece of thread and fold it into a small bite. Like this. Then place the bite over your piece of rope like this. Using your long end, start wrapping around your piece of rope as well as the bite. So here you can see that all I'm doing is wrapping around my piece of rope. Now you can do this fairly tightly, but you don't have to overdo it. Now once you have a number of passes around the rope, take your thread and pass it under and through the bite on the left side. Now at this point, all we need to do is pull on this right strand, and this is going to pull in the left end. We want to get the left end to about the center point of the whipping. So simply pull on the left end using your right end until it reaches about the center of the whipping. After it is at the middle, simply pull on both ends and this is going to secure the whipping. By doing this, we have now secured this end so that it won't come undone. Simply snip the two ends and then do the other end as well. The second thing that you can do when preparing your rope is to inspect it for fuzziness. These fibers sticking out of your rope may be a bit distracting in your projects. So if you don't like them, the best advice that I can give you is not to purchase rope like this. But if you get rope like this, for example if you order online, then you can fix it up a bit. To do this, what you can do is rub beeswax over it, which is going to make these fibers lay flatter to your rope. The second thing is, well, to take a pair of scissors and trim the fibers. This takes time, but in some cases it is worth it. But generally, what we do is try to avoid rope like this if we don't want these fibers. For me, this is not too much of an issue, and I do fix up my mat at the very end by trimming the worst offenders. Tying this mat is super easy. The first thing that we do is we fold our piece of rope in half. So this is the middle point. Take your left strand and use it to make a loop. Like this. So a simple loop. Now using the right strand, what we do is we go over the loop, then using the right strand, we pass under the left strand, like this, and finally, using the same strand, so the right one, we're going to weave through these 4 strands. Going over, under. So, over, under, over, point under. Then pull your strand through and what you got is a Carrick bend. Now you can easily recognize it by the diamond shape at the center. We have 3 bites and we need the last one. We form it by taking our right strand and we simply pass it alongside the left strand, going over under and with this we got our 4th bite. Now all there's left to do is to take our 2 ends and work them into the knot. So let's continue with the right strand. We went over under and we continue following the left strand until we run out of rope. So here we go over just like the left strand. Then under and so on, doubling the mat. Once you run out of the right strand, pick up the left strand and use it to follow the right strand. So here we pass over 2, then continue until we have tripled the mat. Once you have used up both of your ends, the mat should be tripled or nearly tripled. Here you can see that I ran out of my rope a bit earlier. This is not a problem since we basically need to work our rope around a bit to tighten up the mat. We simply continue at one end. In my case, I'm going to take this one. Run our slack through the mat until we reach the other end, and we then use it to continue working on the mat. So simply continue until you have tripled up the entire mat and that the two ends basically come to the same location. After properly tripling up the mat, all of the strands should have 3 passes. The two ends should meet at the bottom of the mat under a strand in order to be neatly hidden. So from the top you can't see the two ends. We're now going to stitch them up together to hold them in place. This is not absolutely mandatory, but it ensures that the two ends aren't going to slip out and undo the mat. So first off, we thread our needle. And we tie an overhand knot onto the end of our thread. This is going to prevent our thread from slipping out when we're stitching. To stitch, we move to the location of the two ends and we start our stitching traveling through the first two strands going up. The thread is going to stop at the overhand knot. Then we're going to move down through all four of the strands. So down. You may want to do it a couple of strands at a time. So once you run your thread through all four of the strands to the bottom, you move back up, going through all four strands again. Again, it is usually best to do it a few strands at a time. Now usually this is enough. You can go down through all four strands again and then back up. But usually this is quite enough to secure the ends. Now what you do is you move down two strands . Then you lock off your stitching by creating a loop . So a simple loop, and then you run your thread through it. And you do this 2 times. Then move with the rest of your thread down through the remaining 2 strands . Then snip the thread. After stitching everything up, the last thing that I do is I run through the mat, removing any major fuzzy bits sticking out. So guys, with this we have come to the end of the video. I hope that the tutorial wasn't terribly hard. I know some aspects require some practice, especially the stitching and the tightening and adjusting process. But once you get those down, you should have no problem making mats. Thank you very much for joining me and see you next time.